German submachine guns. Evolution of the German submachine gun, 1916 to present. Between World War I and today, the German military has designed a variety of submachine guns and machine pistols for almost every occasion or every encounter that the average German soldier would have on the battlefields of World War I and the battlefields of today. So in today's video, I'm going to go over pretty much all of the German submachine guns I could find thus far from World War I to now. So let's get into it. German submachine guns of World War I. During World War I saw the first use of the submachine gun as a whole. The first country to use submachine guns was Italy. The second country to adopt submachine guns or to develop submachine guns was Austria-Hungary, then the US, and then Germany. During the First World War, the first German submachine gun design was the Mauser C96 M1916 Schulz. This was a prototype machine pistol designed in 1916. It was based on the basic Mauser C96 broom handle pistol. Its caliber was 7.63 by 25mm Mauser, and it was fed by a 20-round box magazine. It had a rate of fire between 1,000 and 1,600 rounds per minute maximum, but this is just an estimate. It was most likely between 1,000 and 1,100, just like the M712 Schnellführer of post-World War I. This project was pretty much abandoned in 1917, but it is nice to know that the Germans, at least in World War I, wanted to adopt a machine pistol that could easily be turned into a carbine. Keep in mind, at this time, the Italians had the Villa Perosa, the OVP model 1918, the Beretta M1918, and the Austro-Hungarians had the Hellriegel prototype submachine gun from 1915, and the Maschinenpistole, which was just an Austro-Hungarian version of the Italian Villa Perosa, but chambered in the 9x23mm steyr. The next submachine gun, designed by Germany, was part of the Project Aschenreibung project of 1918, and this weapon was the DWM Mauser M1916/M1917. This was an experimental submachine gun designed between 1916 and 1917. Its caliber was either 9x19mm Parabellum or 7.63 by 25mm Mauser. This weapon was fed by a unique hopper system that was very similar to the Japanese Type 11 LMG of post-World War I, and this system was fed by 8 10-round stripper clips of 9mm or 7.63mm pistol cartridges. Its rate of fire was between 400 and 600 rounds per minute. This is just an estimate, as this gun has never been seen firing, and only 2 prototypes were made. One exists now in the Tula Arsenal Museum in Russia, and the other one, the one you see in the photograph, has pretty much been lost to history. Some states that it might be in the WTS Museum in Koblenz, but that hasn't been shown yet. This submachine gun is pretty unique, and not most people know about it. But yeah, this is pretty much one of the first German submachine gun prototypes, one of the first real submachine gun prototypes that was not developed from an already existing handgun like the previous German submachine gun mentioned on the list. The next German submachine gun designed during the same project time period was the Bergmann MP-18. The Bergmann MP-18 is pretty much the most iconic German weapon or submachine gun from World War I. It set the standard for all German submachine guns after World War I, up until around the 1950s, when the Germans started using submachine guns that were based more on other weapons from other countries. The MP-18 was used by German stormtroopers, Only about 10,000 were made during the First World War. In all, roughly 28,000 were produced, but most of them were kept, roughly 8,000 were kept in storage. After World War I, many MP-18s were modified into MP-28s, but I'll talk about that one later. Towards the end of World War I, a German gun designer named Heinrich Vollmer later designed an MP-18 magazine, a flexible magazine, which held 60 rounds. This magazine was made out of some type of special fabric that allowed it to hold these cartridges in place and feed properly, while the Submachine Gun's magazine was meant to be mounted on the soldier's hip, kind of like a belt buckle or a keychain. During World War I, there were several other World War I submachine guns designed by the German military, but most of these have yet to be found or have yet to be rediscovered. The first submachine gun designed by the Germans in during World War I that is missing is the Maschinenpistole Hoffmann. The second one is the Maschinenpistole Swallows, which was a joint project between Germany and Austria-Hungary. It was pretty much just a redesign of the Swallows machine gun, but rebuilt as a scaled-down submachine gun, or as a machine gun that was scaled down to act as what we would now call a submachine gun. The Walter Firearms Company also designed two submachine gun prototypes, the Maschinenpistole Walter Model 1 and Walter Model 2. Both of these have also not been rediscovered and are mostly lost to history. And the final submachine gun project missing was the Maschinenpistole Dreiss. This was built by the Dreiss Firearms Company. You probably know them from the famous Dreiss rifle of the 1840s and through 1860s. This weapon was pretty much a redesigned or a submachine gun that was based on the Dreiss Model 1907 pistol and the Dreiss Model 1908 pistol carbine. So yeah, these submachine guns are missing. I've been trying to find them for a while. I found information on them, but I haven't found any photographs or blueprints yet. Still trying to find that, so when I find it, I will do another video on those mystery weapons of World War I, or those missing German submachine guns from World War I. The next German submachine guns were designed during the Interwar year, which was between 1919 and 1938. And the first submachine gun designed during the interwar year was the MP Dreiss or Rheinmetall MP-19. The MP-19 was pretty much just a simplified version of the MP-18, and it was also pretty much the prototype for the MP-28. This weapon was chambered for the standard 9x19mm parabellum and had a 32-round box magazine, just like the later MP-28. This weapon had a rate of fire of 450 to 500 rounds per minute and an effective range of 100 to 150 yards. Beyond that, your chances of hitting the target were very slim. This weapon is pretty interesting, and most German small arms enthusiasts have never really heard of the Rheinmetall MP-19. The MP-28 came next. This weapon was designed in the 1920s, and it was basically just a redesign of the MP-18. That's really it. It's just an MP-18. It's really just, I guess you could say, Bergmann's spin on the Rheinmetall MP-19, except, these were made, most of them were made, or a lot of them were made from MP-18s that were still in storage, but most of them overall were newly built SMGs as a whole. So yeah, the MP-28 was the standard German submachine gun for a while until the introduction of the Erma MP-35 and then later the MP-40, but that's later on the list. The next submachine gun design was designed by Heinrich Vollmer, and that was the Erma Vollmer VMP-30. The VMP-30 was based on a prototype called the MP-25, which is basically the same gun, but both guns came out in two different eras, one in 1925 and one in 1930. These were submachine gun carbines, and they were chambered for the 9x19mm Parabellum, while the VMP-25 was chambered for the 7.63 Mauser pistol cartridge. They fired either from a 23 to 32 round stick magazine, or a 32 to some cases I've heard 50 round drum magazine or under steel magazine, kind of like the Snell magazine you saw or trombone magazine you saw on the MP-18, but hanging down underneath the barrel rather than off the side. Now these submachine guns are pretty rare. Not that many of them have survived. So yeah, the next submachine gun is the Hoffmann MP-32. The Hoffmann MP-32, also known as the Bergmann MP-32, was a limited production submachine gun from 1932. This weapon was also chambered for the standard 9mm Parabellum, and was fed with either a 20 or 32 round box magazine. It had the same standard 450 to 550 rounds per minute as all of the submachine guns had for Germany at this time, as they were all really just redesigns of the MP-18. So yeah, this is another rare one that most people never talk about. Another German submachine gun on the next one was the Schmeisser MK-43, sometimes referred to as the MK-36, but it's the MK-43. This was a prototype submachine gun carbine from 1934. Its caliber was a standard 9mm Parabellum, and it was fed by a 20 round box magazine, but it could take the 32 round box magazine as well. It had a rate of fire of 500 rounds per minute. This weapon is pretty rare. Most German gun enthusiasts have never heard of this gun, but it is mentioned in some German firearm books. This gun later evolved into the Schmeisser MK-36, sometimes known as the Schmeisser MK-36 or MK-3. This was a prototype submachine gun carbine from 1936, or Maschinenpistole carabiner from 1936. It's pretty much the same as the previous gun, you know. It's just more, I guess, ergonomic than the previous weapon. After these weapons came the Erma MP-34, another rare German submachine gun or submachine gun carbine from 1934. These weapons during the Second World War were mostly used by the Waffen SS and the Totenkreuz brigades or units or divisions within the German army of World War II. Then after that came the Bergmann MP-35, which was kind of like a simplified or more, I guess, a modernized version of the MP-28. You know, still chambered in the standard 9x19mm Parabellum, and fed by either 24 or 32 round box magazine. The only difference is the increased rate of fire to 540 rounds per minute. The most significant change came with the introduction of the Erma EMP-36. The Erma EMP-36 is literally the prototype for the MP-38/MP-40 series of submachine guns. This weapon was designed between 1934 and 1936, still chambered for the standard 9mm Parabellum and the standard 32 round box magazine, and the standard rate of fire of 400 to 550 rounds per minute. This one is super rare. Not many were made, and not many people know about this gun as a whole. This gun was later to be simplified into what we now know as the MP-38/MP-40 class of submachine guns, which would remain the standard German submachine gun throughout the Second World War. The MP-38/MP-40 was, as I said, a simplified MP-36, made with an all-metal body and an all-metal stock, not stock, but It retained the standard wire stock of the MP-56. Still chambered for the same round, the 9mm parabellum, the 32-round box magazine, the 450 to 500 rounds per minute, and the same effective range of 100 to 300 yards as the previous gun. This is pretty much the most iconic German submachine gun of the Second World War, or the most iconic weapon used by the German Wehrmacht and the SS and all of the volunteer brigades fighting for the Axis powers during the Second World War. This is one of the most iconic weapons alongside the German Sturmgewehr and the Karabiner 98K series of bolt-action rifles. The next development in German submachine guns during the Second World War was the MP-42, or the MP-40-2. This is pretty much just a dual magazine version of the MP-40, meant to give the average soldier an increase in their magazine capacity, or their ability to fire at enemy troops. Other than that, it's pretty much just a double-barreled MP-40. It's one of the rare versions of the MP-40. It's not many people have one of these in their collections, but you know, I kind of wish I could find one of those, but nah, I don't believe they sold those in the U.S. Yeah, the MP-40 was later simplified again, this time with a wooden buttstock and a wooden grip in the form of the MP-41. This submachine gun comes from 1941, and it was pretty much just a cheap version of the MP-40, but with wooden stock instead of an all metal body. I assume this was done to save metal, as 1941 was the same year as Operation Barbarossa, and I'm pretty sure the Germans were pretty much just preparing for the all-out war on the Eastern Front against the Soviet Red Army. But that's just a theory. The next German submachine gun design came towards the end of World War II. At the end of World War II, the Germans were pretty much losing really badly on both the Western and Eastern Front, and the German government had created a large number of volunteer units. Volunteer units like the Volkssturm, the Hitler Youth or Hitler Jugend, and a bunch of other militias to fight alongside the regular army in order to defend the fatherland or the homeland. And to arm these troops, the Germans needed cheap weapons. So the German government started what they called the Primitive Weapons Program, or Primitive Waffen Program. And this program was pretty much meant to create super cheap weapons or inexpensive weapons to arm these volunteer militias. And one of the weapons was the MP-3008. One of these weapons was the MP-3008, also known as the Gerät Monster, was a latch-ditch submachine gun designed in 1944. It was basically just a German version of the Sten gun. The only difference is the magazine was pointing downward. The magazine wheel was facing downward, and the magazine wheel was used as a hand grip. That's it, as a hand guard. Other than that, it's just a Sten gun, Still chambered for 9mm parabellum, and still using the 32-round box magazine. The next submachine gun designed by the Germans was the Erma MP-54. The EMP-44 was an experimental or prototype submachine gun designed between 1942 and 1944. This weapon was designed before the MP-3008, but the prototypes weren't finished until around 1943, 1944. Still chambered in the same 9x19mm parabellum, still using the same 32-round magazine from the MP-40, and it had a rate of fire of 500 rounds per minute. Now, some sources state this gun was actually, the prototypes were built in 1942, and that it's only called the Erma EMP-44 because some of them were issued as last-ditch weapons, but I don't know. I'm just going to assume that they were designed in 1943 and just issued. It was a prototype weapon that was, according to some archives, produced in small numbers, like maybe a few hundred produced in all. Not many of them survived. Only about a handful have survived in museums. That's really it. You know, this weapon is unique. It's pretty much just a simple replacement for the MP-40. You know, too bad this gun didn't go into mass production. The next gun design was the Erma model 1944, sometimes referred to as the Gert 44 or the Gert 34. This gun was an experimental belt-fed submachine gun from 1944 and 1945, and chambered for the same standard 9 by 19 millimeter parabellum. The only difference is this gun was fed by either a 50 or 100 round belt. It had a rate of fire of between 900 and 1,000 rounds per minute. This was a telescoping bolt submachine gun, pretty much the first one designed by the German military. This gun is clearly I guess you can say, a precursor to the Israeli Uzi. Not this gun directly, but in terms of telescoping bolts, this gun predates the Uzi. I hear a lot of Uzi enthusiasts saying this gun, the Uzi, is the first telescoping bolt, but no, it's not. The Japanese also had a telescoping bolt submachine gun they designed in the early 30s, so the Uzi is actually like 20 years late on the telescoping bolt design. But the Erma model 1944 was a prototype that most German, enemy, or Western gun enthusiasts as a whole have never heard of. This weapon was never mass produced. I mean, this is the only photograph I could find of this weapon. So there's not much information on it other than the type of weapon it is. There's no information on how many were produced or if they were ever issued to any of the Volksturm or people militias of the during the last-ditch battles on during the invasion of Germany itself. So I don't know. I mean, it's cool looking, but there's no other information on this weapon. So, well, eventually World War II came to an end and Germany was divided into two, East and West Germany. So here are German submachine guns from the Cold War, also known in German as the Keltenkriegs. So first, let's do East German submachine guns. The first East German submachine gun designed. The next East German submachine gun is the Maschinenpistole IX. This was a prototype machine pistol from 1976, or Maschinenpistole von 1976. That's not how you say 1976 in German. This weapon prototype. There were more than one prototype made, and they were made in 3 different calibers: 9 by 18 millimeter Makarov, 9 by 19 millimeter Parabellum, or 7.63 by 25 millimeter Tokarev. This weapon was fed by 2 separate magazines: a short handgun magazine and a long submachine gun type magazine. The handgun magazine in the grip held 9 rounds, while the magazine and within the foregrip held 13 rounds, so much different. This gun had a rate of fire between 500 and 800 rounds per minute, and had an effective range of about 50 to 100 yards. This is pretty much the rare submachine gun to come out of East Germany. Not a lot of people know about this gun, It's pretty much the coolest weapon. I kind of wish they would put this in those Cold War video games, But that might never happen. Now we go to submachine guns from West Germany. The next East German submachine gun design was the WG-66. The WG-66 was a submachine gun designed in 1965. This weapon was chambered in the 7.62 by 25 millimeter Tokarev and was fed by either a 20 to 32 round box magazine. Its rate of fire was between 500 and 700 rounds per minute. That's really all that is known about this weapon. It's very similar to the next gun, one of the guns from West Germany, the MPL, but that's later on the list. The first submachine gun designed by the West Germans was the Dux M53. The Dux or DUX M53 was pretty much just a German spin on the Russian PPS 43 submachine gun. It's just a PPS 43 manufactured in East Germany. Chambered for 9mm parabellum. The only difference is this weapon was fed by a 50-round double stack magazine. So 25 rounds on both sides of the magazine. It had a rate of fire of 500 rounds per minute, which is actually slower than the PPS 43. But yeah, that was pretty much it. This is just a real submachine gun. Another submachine gun designed by the East German, or Maschinenpistole, designed by the Maschinenpistole, was the Erma MP-56. The Erma MP-56 was a prototype machine pistol, or a limited production machine pistol from 1956. It was fed by a 20-round magazine. Some sources state it could take a 32-round MP-40 magazine. It had a rate of fire of 500 to 700 rounds per minute, but only 10 of these were ever made. So these are super rare. Another telescoping bolt. No, this is not really a telescoping bolt. I mean, it is, but it's not completely. It's a machine pistol. It's very similar to the Polish PM63/PM68 class of submachine guns. So it's a telescoping bolt, but it's kind of like a fully auto handgun, really. This gun is actually smaller than the Polish weapon I mentioned earlier, too. The next weapon on the list is the Mauser MP-57. The Mauser MP-7 was a submachine gun from 1957. This weapon was chambered for the standard 9mm parabellum. It used the 32-round magazine, and it had a rate of fire of 800 rounds per minute. Yeah, I mean that's really it. Another machine pistol, except this weapon comes from West Germany. My mistake. The next submachine gun designed by the West Germans was the Fest submachine gun. The Fest or Feast submachine gun was a limited production fortress gun that was used on the dividing line between East and West Germany. This gun was remote controlled, by the way. It was controlled with some type of joystick-like device. Or it could be fired manually too, but this was a radio controlled submachine gun mounted on the border wall between East and West Germany. Some people say this weapon was used to keep people from trying to escape into West Germany and to prevent potential Soviet spies from West Germany from illegally entering from East Germany from illegally entering into West Germany. But I don't know, I'm just going by the information. The next submachine gun from West Germany is the Dux or DUX M-59. This submachine gun was a prototype. This was a limited production submachine gun from 1959. This weapon was chambered for the standard 9x19mm parabellum and had either a 32 to 40 round magazine. Its rate of fire was 500 RPMs. That's really it. This is just another German spin on Soviet type weapons like the PPS-41. Pretty rare, but it's pretty standard for that time for both sides of Germany to copy the opposite weapons. There wasn't really a major design shift in German submachine gun designs until the introduction of the Walter MPL. The Walter MPL was a submachine gun from 1966. This weapon was chambered for the 9mm parabellum. It fired from a 32-round box magazine and had a rate of fire of 550 RPMs. This is, I guess you could say this is one of the more iconic weapons of West Germany from the West German time period. This weapon was pretty interesting, but this is pretty much the predecessor to a lot of more modern German submachine guns like the MP5 and the UMP5. I guess you can say these are the grandfathers of those guns, and as a whole, there was a shortened or miniature version or carbine version called the Walter MPK, which came out in the same year, 1966. Pretty much the same specs as the previous gun. The only difference is this weapon was much more compact than the MPL. And these were used by the West German military police and the regular police too. They were also used during the Munchen massacre in 1971 by both the assailants and the West German military police in the area. The next major gun development for the German submachine guns of West Germany during the Cold War was the Heckler & Koch MP-54, or the Heckler & Koch 54. This was a prototype submachine gun from 1965 and 1966, still chambered for the standard 9x19mm Parabellum. This weapon had either a 15 to 30 round magazine. This is where Germany started ditching the 32 round magazines. Its rate of fire was 800 rounds per minute. This gun was basically the prototype to what we now call the MP5. This was the first prototype, limited production submachine gun for the MP5. The MP5 series would later come into being in the form of the earlier model Heckler & Koch MP5K from 1976. This weapon pretty much set the standard for most modern German submachine guns up to date in terms of its internal workings and in terms of what it's made of. The material used to make this weapon is made out of polymers rather than having a submachine gun made completely out of an all metal frame like pretty much all German submachine guns going back to World War I, with the exception of submachine guns that had a wooden stock. The MP5K is still pretty much used by the German police, along with the newer model MP5s. The MP5 series as a whole is pretty much the most popular brand of German submachine guns today. The MP5K will later go on to spawn the Heckler & Koch MP5 A2 and A3 series, which were also developed in the 70s and 80s. These weapons had pretty much the same specs as the original MP5K. The only difference is these weapons had the ability to mount suppressors and whatnot. The MP5K could too, but only on later models. So yeah. The MP5 as a whole is one of the more interesting, or one of the more standard German weapons of today. Alongside the older model H and K G3 and the G36C series of battle rifles and assault rifles. Machine pistol from the Cold War era is the Heckler & Koch Volkspistole BP-70. This was a compact machine pistol designed in the 1970s. This gun had the highest rate of fire of almost any German submachine gun, period, having a rate of fire of 2,200 rounds per minute. It was chambered for the standard. It was chambered for the standard 9 by 19 millimeter pellet barrel. But if you live in Israel, you can get the 9 by 21 millimeter IMI caliber version 2 or variant 2. This weapon was fed by a 18 round magazine, which is too short, too small for that rate of fire. I mean, you talking 2,200 rounds a minute. Those 18 rounds are only gonna last like a millisecond. The next submachine gun design was the Heckler & Koch SMG-1 and SMG-2. These were experimental submachine guns designed in 1981. They were chambered for the standard 9mm parabellum and were fed with 30-round stick magazines or 60-round drum magazines. They still had a rate of fire of 500 rounds per minute. Keep in mind the Germans are always more for accuracy rather than spray and pray. Just in case you were wondering why 500 rounds per minute was the standard for these guns. The SMG Model 1 and 2 prototypes, these were pretty neat guns. I mean, just look at them. They were meant to replace the old MP5 and MP5K series, but that never happened. And the MP5 is still around today in the form of the UMP5 and the MP5A3. The next submachine gun design was the Heckler & Koch PDW GAT. The GAT was a joint German and French machine pistol / PDW project from 1989. This weapon was chambered for the experimental 5.7 by 22 millimeter GAT and was chambered for it was fed by either a 20 to 25 round magazine and had a rate of fire of 900 rounds per minute. This weapon never made it past the prototype stage, and the actual prototype is locked away somewhere at the H&K factory. The next prototype weapon was the Heckler & Koch MBW. The MBW was part of the G11 project, and this was an attempt to make a G11 style machine pistol. This weapon is also from 1989 and was chambered for the experimental 4.73 by 25 millimeter H&K caseless cartridge. This gun was also chambered, was also fired from either a 15 to 20 round magazine and had a rate of fire of around 900 rounds per minute. This gun too never made it past the prototype stage and is also locked away in the H&K factory. That's pretty much it. After the Cold War, the Germans in the 1990s to now, or from 1990 to now, have designed some more advanced SMG prototypes and designs that are on the market now, or that could have been on the market if they had been mass produced. The first gun designed after the Cold War was the Heckler & Koch MP-56 PIP. This was a prototype submachine gun from 1990. It pretty much had the same specs as the standard MP5, except for the magazine capacity, which was reduced from 30 rounds to either a 20 round magazine or a 25 round magazine. Its rate of fire was increased to 900 rounds per minute. But other than that, that was pretty much it. The next submachine gun prototype was the Heckler & Koch or Heckler & Koch MP-2000. Was the Heckler & Koch MP-2000. This was a submachine gun design from 1998. This weapon was chambered for the. This was a submachine gun design from 1998. This weapon was chambered for the 9 by 19 millimeter parabellum. It was fed by either a 25. This weapon was made for the German Special Forces. And that's the German SWAT teams and police special forces. This submachine gun was designed for German special police force units. Not many were made. I mean, it's still a cool weapon, but there's not really much on this weapon. The next German submachine gun is the Heckler & Koch UMP-5, or the Heckler & Koch UMP Universal. The UMP Universal is a submachine gun from 1990. This weapon is chambered in either the 9 by 19 millimeter parabellum, or the 10 millimeter parabellum, or the 40 Smith & Wesson. This weapon usually has a 25 to 30 round magazine and has a rate of fire of 600 to 650 rounds per minute. Now, the UMP Universal is pretty much the, I guess, the standard redesign of the MP5 series. This weapon is mostly used by SWAT teams and German special forces of nowadays, or today, or in the modern times. That's pretty much it. It's really just an upgraded MP5, upgraded ergonomics and whatnot. The next German submachine gun, or machine pistol, or Maschinenpistole, is the Heckler & Koch HK MP-7A1. The MP-7A1 is a submachine gun and personal defense weapon, or PDW, from 2000-2001. This weapon is chambered for the 4.6 by 30 millimeter H&K cartridge. This weapon is fed by either a 20 to 40 round magazine and has a rate of fire of 550 rounds per minute. This weapon is basically like the MP5 fused with the G36C in the form of a PDW firing a smaller Kurz type bullet, or a much smaller round than the 5.56 round used in the G36C. The 4.6 by 30 millimeter H&K cartridge is an armor-piercing bullet. So basically, this gun is like the best of all German submachine guns designed in the last 30 to 40 years. So yeah, that's really it. This is it. The H&K MP7 is the most advanced of the German submachine guns of now. I'm pretty sure the Germans have some more advanced weapons up their sleeves. So in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, we'll see where the Germans end up at in the submachine gun department. So what do you all think of these weapons? Which German submachine guns which German submachine guns do you consider to be the best of the best? Which ones are your favorite most of all? My favorite German submachine gun so far is the DWM Mauser M1916 prototype, the MP-36, the Schmeisser carabiners. And in terms of modern submachine guns, it's the MP7 and the prototype MP5 PP. Other than that, that's pretty much it. And if you guys have any more ideas for future videos, please put them in the comment section below. And until next time, this was J-Man Time, signing off.